Now, the IDE is, a fairly full-featured IDE in terms of what you need it to do. We need to write sketches. Sketches are files that have no extension. There's really no notion of project or workspace or solution. Again, some of the features of the IDE are that it's based upon the processing IDE. So if you've ever used processing, which is used by a lot of people in the arts or graphics space, you may be familiar with the IDE. This one is targeted for Arduino specifically, and again, runs on all the different platforms because it's built using Java. There aren't a lot of preferences that you can change or might need to change in the IDE. You can definitely change the font size. There is a preferences dialog, although the preferences dialog doesn't show all the preferences. All the preferences are contained inside of a preferences.txt file, and the slide shows you the different places that that's stored depending on the platform. Again, you generally only need to go into those if you're doing any sort of troubleshooting, like in terms of connecting to your particular board. Most of the time, again, you won't have to dive down that deep. So writing a sketch is really as simple as writing a program really in any environment. You include all the libraries that you need to use. For many of the simple, just using a board sketches, you won't need to include any libraries. As you get more complex in terms of your project, you may need to bring in libraries based upon shields and other devices. At the top of a file, you can put variables and constants that are there for global use. Again, you have the setup function that's going to initialize everything the way you want. You'll set up the digital pins or the analog pins the way that you want, set up any other runtime variables, and then the loop function just executes over and over and over and over again. Now, I did say that there isn't any notion of project inside of the IDE, but there is the notion of tabs. So instead of having your sketch in one file, you can have your sketch in multiple files. All the files will be compiled together. So you could put your loop in one file, your setup in another file, all your constants and variable declarations in a third file. These are all files without extensions, and you can control them by going to the tab button, which is the down arrow on the right-hand side of the IDE. You can create new tabs with that or with the keyboard shortcut, and you can move between the tabs using the control functions, previous tab, next tab, or pick the tab by name. So we've got our sketch. We're going to go ahead and press upload. What does the IDE do to our file? Well, the first thing it does is it pre-processes it and turns it from the Arduino C into legal C. So the Arduino compiler is really the compiler for the Atmel CPU. So AVR GCC is what's used. It takes your code that's been pre-processed into C. It links that with Arduino specific binary libraries, so the main and any other pieces of code that are needed for a particular board, and it outputs that into a single Intel hex file. So your sketch, pre-processed, linked with object files, and then we have the hex file. And the hex file is the thing that's actually going to get uploaded to the board. The board is uploaded to using something called AVR Dude. If you want to get into advanced scenarios with Arduino, you can actually use another tool called a chip programmer in order to upload your sketch, really your binary at this point. The only reason that you might want to do that is because the other piece of code that is on the chip in the flash memory is the bootloader. The bootloader is that thing that executes your code every time the board is reset. So your hex file is written to the flash memory. The bootloader loads it and causes it to execute. If the board's ever reset, the bootloader runs again and causes your program to execute. And it just runs and runs and runs and runs until you either power down the board or you upload a different sketch. As I mentioned in the demo in the first module, having sort of a clear sketch is kind of nice to be able to clear things out, just an empty setup and an empty loop. Now, is it normal for you to want to replace the bootloader and upload your sketch directly? No, but it's an advanced scenario, and if you were going to put the Arduino in a more permanent place and you did need that extra 0.5K, you could do that.